This program is supported by Protect Plus Gold, a broad-spectrum disinfectant, kills 99.9% of disease-causing germs and works in 10 minutes.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International.
And I'm CJ Hero. Welcome to the program. On tonight's headlines.
Dozens of people died after torrential rains caused landslides and flooded a city in central China.
The southwest monsoon will continue to drench many areas in Luzon here in the Philippines, according to the Weather Bureau. Floods hit several areas in Manila.
The World Health Organization said the highly contagious Delta variant of COVID-19 is expected to become the dominant strain of the virus over the coming months.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And Canada's western province of British Columbia declared a state of emergency, with wildfires expected to grow even larger in the coming days.
At least 25 people have died after torrential rains caused landslides and flooded the city in central China. Take a look. As river embankments were breached in record downpours across Henan province, President Xi Jinping described the situation as extremely severe, with flood control measures entering a critical stage, according to state media. Local officials said around 200,000 city residents were evacuated, with soldiers leading rescue efforts in the city of over 10 million people, where days of heavy rains have inundated the streets and subway. Nerve-shredding images shared on social media showed shocked passengers contending with the fast-rising waters inside a train carriage. Relatives outside the city made anxious pleas on China's Weibo for information as communications to the city went down. Authorities have issued the highest warning level for Henan province as floods continue to hammer the region. As the scale of the disaster continued to unspool today, the Chinese army warned that a stricken dam around an hour from Zhengzhou city could collapse at any time after being severely damaged in torrential rains. The regional unit of the People's Liberation Army alerted Tuesday that the relentless downpour had caused a 20-meter breach in the Yetan Dam in Loyang, a city of around 7 million people. The PLA Central Theater Command said it had sent soldiers to carry out an emergency response, including blasting and flood diversion. Annual floods during China's rainy season cause chaos and wash away roads, crops, and houses, but the threat has worsened over the decades due in part to widespread construction of dams and levees that have cut connections between the river and adjacent lakes and disrupted floodplains that had helped absorb the summer surge. Scientists also say climate change is also worsening flooding around the world alongside other increasingly extreme weather patterns.
Meanwhile, firefighters rescued trapped and scared passengers from a flooded subway station in central Chinese city of Zhengzhou, where deadly torrential rains have wreaked havoc. This footage was widely shared online, and it shows passengers in Zhengzhou trapped inside a flooded subway car, packed tightly together as the water climbs higher. We will be showing that video in just a moment. Meanwhile, more than 20 centimeters of rain fell in 1 hour on Tuesday, according to the Meteorological Observatory. Take a look.
这门口太深是吧？好，明白。
下边电都断了。
And we want to show you these images showing a person in China's Zhengzhou city as well being swept away down a street by floodwaters. Take a look.
哎呦呦呦呦呦！我天哪天哪天哪！拽不住了，他已经拽不住。哦！我天哪！我快点起来呀！快点快点！
往那个白车那飘，抵着那个白车。哇！不会摔上呢。哎，那个人咋少一个呀？这不是吗？前面一个，后面一个。哇！还有一个！我的天哪！不会摔呀！不是，前面那不是前面有个坑，前面有个坑。
我天，都去救了，都去了，都去了！啊！
前面有个坑，我天哪，别掉进去！
我天哪！哎，到了到了到了！啊，吓死！
Meanwhile, the southwest monsoon, or habagat, will continue to drench many areas in Luzon, according to the Weather Bureau. The habagat is still being enhanced by Typhoon Fabian and the weather disturbance outside the Philippine area of responsibility with the international name Sempaka, Bagpagasa said in its 5 a.m. weather bulletin. Floods hit several areas in Manila on Wednesday, Quirino Station, Padre Faura to UN Station. Now, Maria Orosa corner Padre Burgos, Manila City Hall in front of SM Manila, among others. Meanwhile, Typhoon Fabian has intensified but has no direct effect on any part of the country, according to weather forecaster Chris Perez. He said Fabian is far from the landmass and has been moving slowly for the last 6 hours. No tropical cyclone wind signal is currently in effect.
Meanwhile, Canada's western province of British Columbia declared a state of emergency with wildfires expected to grow even larger in the coming days due to high heat and winds. Take a look.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike Farnworth, Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General for British Columbia. In the summers of 2017 and 2018, BC faced the most damaging wildfire seasons in our history. While the fires we're seeing now are not yet as widespread, their impact has been great. The grief and hardship being faced by the people of Lytton and the Lytton First Nation is immense. The province will continue to do everything possible, as we have from the start, to protect communities from wildfires and support people who are required to evacuate from their homes. In a briefing last night, officials advised that we will be facing some days of very difficult weather in the interior. What is forecast may lead to more severe fire behavior and the potential for more evacuations. As mentioned, resources remain tight, both on the fire lines and in our ability to provide accommodations to evacuees. Volunteer resources are also stretched thin. We have reached a critical point. Based on the advice of emergency management and wildfire officials and my briefing last night on the worsening weather, I am declaring a provincial state of emergency.
Now, fires have been ravaging Western Canada and the United States West Coast for several weeks following a scorching heat wave in late June that experts have tied to climate change. The province has nearly 300 active wildfires spurred by hot, dry weather that's expected to continue in the coming days, in addition to rising winds that may spread the flames. The interior and southwest of British Columbia, including part of its border with the U.S., are particularly affected. More than 3,000 firefighters are currently battling blazes across the province.
In the United States, more than 80 large fires are burning, the biggest of which is in the Pacific Northwest state of Oregon. The bootleg fire has scorched almost 390,000 acres, an area bigger than Los Angeles. Take a look.
In and haven't been keeping. As we work down through here, we had a fire whirl come through on the 18th that it was fairly extreme fire behavior, ripped some trees out of the ground even, got across our control line, the 28 road, and put about 1,000 to 2,000 acres of fire across the 28 road into the Watson fire scar. This is where we added the most acreage yesterday. In the last 24 hours, and that was about 300 maybe 350 acres. And that's the least amount of acreage gain we've had since we've been in place for the last week or so. For at least the last 24 hours, crews are in there continuing to mop up, which is they're using tools and water. They're also using helicopters to support their efforts and knock out the areas of heat and the most concern, especially the stuff that's exposed to the wind.
Oregon's giant bootleg fire has triggered over 2,100 evacuations and destroyed 67 homes in nearly 2 weeks of explosive growth. The largest inferno in the United States, now spanning 340,000 acres, an area larger than Los Angeles, as we said earlier, has come unusually early in the fire season, driven by multi-year drought, gusty winds, and a scorching start to the summer that experts have linked to climate change. The same trends have occurred further south in California, where 5 times as many acres have burned compared to the same point in 2020. Last year was the worst year in the state's modern wildfire history, although it had a relatively slow start. Residents were ordered to evacuate from yet another new fire near Lake Tahoe on the border of California and Nevada, which forced closures to the popular Pacific Crest hiking trail. And high temperatures were expected across much of the Northwest, including potential records in parts of the northern plains, which are under an excessive heat warning, tweeted the National Weather Service. Climate change amplifies droughts, which dry out regions, creating ideal conditions for wildfires to spread out of control and inflict unprecedented material and environmental damage.
Meanwhile, New York and parts of the eastern United States and Canada were shrouded in a gray smoky haze from fires burning in the western U.S. and Canada. New York State's Environmental Protection Services issued an air quality advisory.
Даже она мне говорит: бабушка, давай закроем окна, а то мне, говорит, трудно дышать, кашель. Я не знаю, что это такое.
The advisory automatically triggered when fine particle matter is expected to rise above 35 micrograms per cubic meter of air. An expert from the agency said it is not uncommon for smoke from piers or fires in the west of the country to reach the New York area. And we'll be back with more news right after this break. Stay tuned.
This portion is brought to you by North Luzon Express Terminal.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Ang trabaho naman talaga ng maritime group ng PNP is to enforce the maritime laws.
Tayo lang yung stricto, pero in other parts of the country, pwede na naman ang tourism.
Definitely, we are ready to respond to a possible spike.
Sapagkat ang aming intensyon ay makatulong lang sa mga tao na wala talagang magamit na gamot.
92 voted for this resolution, which will make it stronger, calling on the Justice Department to come up with more stringent ways to be able to avert these hate crimes against Asian Americans.
Mas marami po tayong magagamit ngayon na mga tools or mga equipment.
Maraming salamat, Weng, at sa buong puwersa ng Balitalakayan sa pagkakataong ito.
Tatalakayin ang mga pangunahing balita live sa teleradyo ng Net25 at Radyo Aguila DCEC 1062. Kasama si Weng de la Fuente sa Balitalakayan.
We live in interesting times.
And we continue our news. We go back to the United States, where New York and parts of eastern United States and Canada were shrouded in a gray smoke haze Tuesday from fires burning in the western U.S. and Canada. New York State's Environmental Protection Services issued an air quality advisory, automatically triggered when fine particle matter is expected to rise above 35 micrograms per cubic meter of air. An expert from the agency said it's not uncommon for smoke from fires in the west of the country to reach the New York area, but they usually remain high enough to not affect air quality. This time, the smoke was lower than usual, according to an expert. The phenomenon was set to dissipate on Wednesday, U.S. time, with the arrival of a cold front in the New York region, according to a spokesperson for the U.S. National Weather Service.
The Russian Defense Ministry images show military helicopters helping to tackle forest fires in the Republic of Karelia in northwestern Russia, dropping 26 metric tons of water on the most active fires. A heat wave in northern Siberia has helped to spark forest fires, blanketing cities like Yakutsk in smoke. Devastating forest fires have ripped across Siberia with increasing regularity over the past few years. Country's weather officials and environmentalists have linked the event to climate change and an underfunded forest service. Fires flare across Russian forest land annually, but they have become more intense in recent years amid unusually high temperatures across the northern Siberian tundra. Yakutia is itself in the grips of a heat wave.
In the related news, the heat wave in northern Siberia has helped to spark the forest fires, blanketing cities like Yakutsk in smoke. Take a look.
Да, но для ребенка это... Даже она мне говорит: бабушка, давай закроем окна, а то мне, говорит, трудно дышать, кашель. Я не знаю, что это такое.
Учитывая, что я уже переносила коронавирус, в принципе, мы оба переносили, и дышать проблема вообще. Поэтому, конечно, проблемно. Скажем, лишняя нагрузка на легкие идет.
Devastating forest fires have ripped across Siberia with increasing regularity over the past few years. And according to a Reuters report, the regional capital Yakutsk, sometimes known as the planet's coldest city, was forced to suspend flights at its airport due to bad visibility. And transport on the river Lena that carves through Siberia was also interrupted. According to many scientists, Russia, especially its Siberian and Arctic regions, is among the countries most exposed to climate change. And Russia has set numerous records in recent years. And in June last year, registered 38 degrees Celsius or 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit in the town of Verkhoyansk, the highest temperature recorded above the Arctic Circle since measurements began. The rising mercury levels have contributed to devastating floods and forest fires that have affected Siberia with increasing regularity.
In other news, Chancellor Angela Merkel's cabinet approved an emergency aid package Wednesday for flood-stricken regions of Germany and said billions would be needed to rebuild homes, businesses, and vital infrastructure. Take a look.
Uns hier heute ein Bild machen können von den Schäden, die es in Bad Münstereifel gibt, und die sind erschreckend. Es sind für diejenigen, die hier wohnen, entsetzliche Zustände zum Teil. Es ist vieles nicht mehr bewohnbar. Wir werden morgen im Kabinett in Berlin ein Programm auflegen, wo es um finanzielle Hilfe geht. Und hier geht es darum, dass auf der einen Seite unbürokratisch Soforthilfe ausgezahlt wird.
A week into the region's worst flooding disaster in living memory, which has killed at least 170 in Germany and 201 in total in Europe, the right-left Grand Coalition government unblocked some 400 million euros or an equivalent of $470 million in immediate relief. Finance Minister Olaf Scholz said half will come from the federal government of Europe's top economy and the rest from the 16 regional states. Scholz, the chancellor candidate for the Social Democrats, said Germany would have to prepare for increasingly frequent natural disasters triggered by climate change. Annalena Baerbock, the Greens flag bearer for the election, called for a more coordinated approach to warning citizens while stressing the country must prepare better for extreme weather events due to global warming. Merkel, who is retiring this year after 16 years in power, on Tuesday defended Germany's preparations for deadly disasters. She said even experts had been taken by surprise by the sheer brutal force and speed of last week's rains, which left many stricken towns looking like war zones. Eagle News will be back with more stories. Please don't go away.
Protect yourself and loved ones. Use Protect Plus Gold, a broad-spectrum disinfectant that kills 500 strains of bacteria, fungi, and viruses such as coronavirus and other disease-causing microorganisms. Also potent against viruses in pets. It kills 99.9% of disease-causing germs and works in 10 minutes. Dissolve 1 teaspoon in 1 liter of water. Apply on areas for disinfection or use it for misting. Protect Plus Gold.
Ilang taon na tayo sa mundo, nakasulat na ba to sa libro? Ano mang dulo, ikaw at ako.
Hi guys! Ako po si CJ Novato at abangan niyo po ako bilang guest performer sa Letters and Music 1 to 2 p.m. Syempre, dito lang sa Net25. See you po!
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights, sharpen your instincts for smart decision making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Hey there, Arnie Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net25.
Welcome back. The World Health Organization said today the highly contagious Delta variant of COVID-19 is expected to become the dominant strain of the virus over the coming months. Delta, which was first detected in India, has now been recorded in 124 territories, 13 more than last week, and already accounts for more than 3/4 of sequenced specimens in many major countries, according to the WHO. Of the 3 other coronavirus variants of concern, Alpha, first detected in Britain, has been reported in 180 territories, up 6 from last week. Beta, first detected in South Korea in 130, up 7. And Gamma, first detected in Brazil in 78, up 3. According to SARS-CoV-2 sequences submitted to the GIS Aid Global Science Initiative over the 4 weeks to July 20, the prevalence of Delta exceeded 75% in several countries. And those included Australia, Bangladesh, Botswana, Britain, China, Denmark, India, Indonesia, Israel, Portugal, Russia, Singapore, and South Africa. The Geneva-based organization said overall 3.4 million new COVID cases were reported in the week to July 18, up 12% on the week before.
Interior Secretary Eduardo Año assured the local government units and the Philippine National Police will enforce all laws, ordinances, omnibus guidelines, and community quarantine protocols to keep the people safe from possible local transmission of more contagious Delta variant of COVID-19. Take a look.
At dahil hindi kayang tukuyin ng ordinaryong test kits at kailangan ng genome sequencing, maaaring mas malaki pa ang bilang ng may dala ng variant na ito sa ngayon. Kaya nangangailangan ng mas matinding pag-iingat ang lahat. Sa susunod ng mga araw ay maglalabas ang DILG ng memorandum upang paalalahanan ng ating local government units na maganda sa lalong madaling panahon ng mga estratehiya sa posibleng local transmission ng COVID Delta variant.
He said border control, especially in the international airports and seaports, will be intensified. Local chief executives will lead the aggressive mass vaccination and faster testing, tracing, contact tracing, and isolation of patients infected with the virus. Through Operation Listo or Operation Awareness, the protocol for the management of emerging infectious diseases, Año said there will be an increased number of quarantine and isolation and healthcare facilities. Año also said the country has so far recorded 36 Delta variant cases with 2 deaths.
Meanwhile, new COVID infections in the United States are still rising, up 200% in just 2 weeks. Federal health officials there said that the COVID Delta variant accounts for 80% of those cases. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki told reporters that vaccinated staffers there were now infected, but she did not confirm how many or when. Take a look.
Sure. Well, first, let me confirm that yesterday a fully vaccinated White House official tested positive for COVID-19 off campus. In accordance with our rigorous COVID-19 protocols, the official remains off campus as they wait for a confirmatory PCR test. The White House Medical Unit has conducted contact tracing interviews and determined no close contacts among White House principals or staff or the president. The individual has mild symptoms.
Have there been any other cases of breakthrough COVID among the White House staff? And would you commit to publicly confirming cases if others occur in the future?
There have been. I will say that we, according to an agreement we made during the transition to be transparent and make information available, we committed that we would release information proactively if it is commissioned officers. We continue to abide by that commitment.
Meanwhile, the office of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi confirmed that one of her senior spokespeople had tested positive after meeting with Democratic state lawmakers from Texas who had been in the U.S. Capitol. The individual had no contact with Pelosi, who comes after the vice president in the presidential line of succession since being exposed. Pelosi's deputy chief of staff, Drew Hamill, said in a statement, after making enormous progress against the pandemic, the vaccination campaign in the U.S. has stalled in recent weeks. About 68% of adults have received at least a first dose, but there are large geographical disparities.
Staying in the U.S., Kentucky Republican Senator Paul Rand and Dr. Anthony Fauci had another heated exchange over COVID-19. Senator Paul accused Dr. Fauci of obfuscating the truth about a government agency funding controversial research at China's specialized laboratory at the center of theories about the origins of the coronavirus pandemic. Take a look.
It is not. It's a dance, and you're dancing around this because you're trying to obscure responsibility for 4 million people dying around the world from a pandemic.
And let's send Dr. Fauci.
I have to, well, now you're getting into something. If the point that you are making
is that the grant that was funded as a sub-award from EcoHealth to Wuhan created SARS-CoV-2. That's where you are getting. Let me finish.
We don't know.
Well,
we don't
wait
know
a minute.
If it did come from the lab, but all the evidence is pointing that it came from the lab, and there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including yourself.
And you are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individuals. I totally resent that. And if anybody is lying here, Senator, it is you.
Proof of vaccination or a negative test is now required in France to enter cinemas, museums, sporting events, and other cultural venues as the country braces for a feared spike in cases from the Delta variant. Antigen tests are offered at the entrance to the Eiffel Tower. Take a look in Paris for visitors without a health pass. The so-called health pass will be required for all events or places with more than 50 people before being extended to restaurants, cafes, and shopping centers in August. The new measure was announced last week by President Emmanuel Macron in a bid to boost vaccinations. Its rollout comes a day after the country recorded 18,181 new infections in 24 hours, more than double the figure from just a week ago. The initial COVID-19 pass was implemented by decree, while lawmakers will vote on its extension to restaurants and trains or planes for long-distance travel. From September, vaccinations will also be required for healthcare and retirement home workers, many of whom have been particularly worried or dismissive of the shots. Over 100,000 people demonstrated across France on Saturday to protest the health pass, denouncing a dictatorship that would discriminate against those opposed to the vaccine.
Now, Londoners react to the lifting of most day-to-day COVID-19 restrictions in England. We have Kathleen Eusebio of our EBC UK Bureau with that story. Kathleen?
Here is an update in the United Kingdom. Day-to-day pandemic restrictions were lifted in England on Monday, but Freedom Day was met with deep concern from scientists as coronavirus cases surge across the nation and around the world. Daily infection numbers have also climbed in Britain, averaging more than 50,000 since last week. But despite accusations against the UK government of recklessness, it lifted legal mandates on social distancing, wearing masks, and working from home, urging personal responsibility instead. Let's listen in to how Londoners react to the lifting of most day-to-day COVID-19 restrictions.
I think that we should still be wearing masks. I've just come up from Brighton, about an hour's train journey, and I was really pleased actually. Most people on the train were still wearing a mask. But I think it's really premature to be doing lots of things in life like night clubbing and things like that now. I won't be doing that. I think we just need to be a bit more cautious through the summer.
The restrictions should be lifted. We need to live with this virus, but I do believe that we should be wearing the mask in enclosed spaces on public transport and that still. And like the rules with travelling, you know, if you follow all the rules, have the vaccinations, you're doing the jabs before and after, I can't see why we can't travel safely. We've travelled to Portugal recently and had no issues at all. So fingers crossed we'll get back to normal soon.
Well, we do have to remember that some things have to stay to keep people safe. Enjoy life, go out, do more, but remember there are some things like a mask that can stop somebody from...
Sports stadia, cinemas and theatres can now also run at full capacity. COVID-19 travel rules and self-isolation for close contacts remain in place. Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who is self-isolating after his health minister was infected, has defended the move, dubbed Freedom Day by some media, but urged people to remain prudent. The government says thanks to a rapid vaccination program, the risks to the healthcare system are manageable. Vaccines Minister Nadhim Zawahi told Sky News he was confident the government was doing the right thing now, before any winter resurgence in respiratory disease. Scotland and Wales, whose devolved governments set their own health policy, said they would maintain the mask mandate among other curbs. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Kathleen De Serbia. We live in interesting times.
Up to two-thirds of India's population may have been infected with COVID-19, according to a government study. The blood serum survey of about 29,000 people in June and July showed 67.6% of those tested had antibodies. ICMR Chief Balram Bhargava said that the study shows there is a ray of hope. Take a look.
Here we have this number, that is the overall seroprevalence is 67.6%. in the entire population, which is from 6 years and adults included. In conclusion, two-thirds of the general population, that is above the age of 6 years, had SARS-CoV-2 infection. More importantly, a third of the population did not have any antibodies. That is still approximately 40 crore population of this country is still vulnerable. So the implications of this large serosurvey done as round number 4 clearly show that there is a ray of hope. But there is no room for complacency. We must maintain COVID-appropriate behavior and community engagement.
The hundreds of millions in India without antibodies are more susceptible to severe infection. Only 13% of the adults in the study were fully vaccinated. India, home to 1.3 billion people, has only vaccinated about 8% of eligible adults, triggering fears of an imminent wave of cases as it eases COVID curbs. India's official COVID death toll of 418,480 is the world's third highest after the U.S. 609,000 fatalities and Brazil's 544,000. But a U.S. research group report also released on Tuesday estimated that the actual death toll could be up 10 times higher, citing the number of extra people who died compared with pre-crisis figures.
Now, India's parliament erupted over a cyber scandal. A media consortium has reported that spyware helped to monitor government opponents in 50 countries, including India. Take a look.
Similar claims were made regarding the use of Pegasus on WhatsApp. Those reports had no factual basis and were categorically denied by all parties, including in the Supreme Court. The press reports of 18 July 2021 also appear to be an attempt to malign the Indian democracy and its well-established institutions. Publisher of the report states that it cannot say if the numbers in the published list were under surveillance. Second, the company whose technology was allegedly used has denied these claims outrightly, and the time-tested procedures of our country are well established to ensure that unauthorized surveillance cannot occur. Look at this issue through the prism of logic. It clearly emerges that there is no substance whatsoever.
Opposition lawmakers shouted accusations and repeatedly disrupted the session. The Indian government dismissed the allegations as highly sensational.
Meanwhile, 100 villagers in northwest Nigeria were freed on Tuesday after a 42-day hostage ordeal and assurances to the abductors that they would not face charges, according to police and other sources. Heavily armed gangs known locally as bandits have long plagued northwest and central Nigeria by looting, stealing cattle, and abducting for ransom. Armed kidnappings along highways and from homes and businesses now make almost daily news in Africa's most populous country. Gunmen stormed the village of Manawa in Zamfara State on July 8, seizing 100 residents, including women and children, and taking them to a forest hideout, according to State Police spokesman Mohammed Shehu. Hostages in Nigeria are typically released after a ransom payment, with those whose families failed to pay often killed. But this release was unconditional and was secured without giving any financial or material gain to the gang, according to Shehu in a statement. A source familiar with the negotiations told AFP the bandits agreed to release the villagers after police and state authorities assured them no action would be taken against them for the kidnap. The released hostages were due to undergo medical checks before being reunited with their families.
Small fires still smoldered under the collapsed roof of a label printing company in Durban, filling the air with the acrid smell of chemical combustion days after devastating riots shook South Africa. The Ushukela Industrial Park in the southeastern port city, its name means sweet in Zulu, was one of several that were blitzed in a spree of arson and looting that hit parts of South Africa last week. Across the road, hundreds of smashed television screens were strewn across the entrance of a blackened LG Electronics factory, which had relocated less than a year ago from South Africa's financial capital, Johannesburg. Manufacturing is a backbone of Durban's economy, boosted by proximity to one of the largest and busiest shipping terminals in sub-Saharan Africa. Large factories and warehouses line the outskirts of the lush ocean-facing city, which is also a popular tourist destination. Those buildings were heavily targeted by mobs who plundered stock and lit fires in violence sparked by the jailing of South Africa's graft-accused ex-president Jacob Zuma. The unrest rapidly spread to Johannesburg before 215 died in stampedes crushed by falling objects or caught in blazes. The orgy of looting has now subsided, but the damage to property and equipment in KwaZulu-Natal province alone is estimated at around $1.4 billion or about 1.19 billion euros.
In other news, Earth's wealthiest man, Jeff Bezos, says he's going to build a road to space so that our kids and their kids can build the future. As he returns from a space flight with a crew of his firm, Blue Origin's first crewed space mission. The crew included 82-year-old barrier-breaking woman aviator Wally Funk and 18-year-old Dutch teen Oliver Damon. Funk and Damon became the oldest and youngest astronauts, respectively. Take a look.
We are about to go to space, everybody. Oh my goodness, listen to the roar of the BE-3 engine. We are just about to pass through Max Q.
How it felt? Oh my God! My expectations were high and they were dramatically exceeded. We were talking about this a little bit in the car ride on the way back, and I don't know, the zero-G piece may have been one of the biggest surprises because it felt so normal. Jose, please come on up. A new philanthropic initiative, and if you could put the slide up so people can see it. It is called the Courage.
Go main engine cutoff, a beautiful shot down the New Shepard rocket. Look at that view.
What we're doing is the first step of something big. And I know what that feels like. I did it 3 decades ago, almost 3 decades ago, with Amazon. And big things start small. But you can tell when you're onto something. And this is important. We're going to build a road to space so that our kids and their kids can build the future. And we need to do that. We need to do that to solve the problems here on Earth.
At this point, there are sensors on board that are detecting how high
First up, your booster has landed.
Oh, so far, a nominal flight. Here comes the crew capsule back from space. The drogues deployed. Here are the mains out, reefing and coming to full inflation. Our rocket went over Mach 3, and now they're coming floating back down at just about 15 or 16 miles an hour.
At this point, there are sensors on board that are detecting how high they are above the ground.
Brisbane was awarded the 2032 Olympics, becoming the third Australian city to host the Summer Games after Melbourne and Sydney. International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach confirmed the widely expected result after delegates voted 72-5 with 3 abstentions at the IOC session in Tokyo. The announcement was greeted by cheers from the Brisbane delegates at the IOC session, and fireworks were set off in the Australian city where people had gathered to await the vote. Venues will be spread across Brisbane and nearby towns in Queensland state, including the Gold Coast, which hosted the 2018 Commonwealth Games. The decision means the IOC has now secured hosts for the next 3 Summer Olympics, with Paris holding the event in 2024 and Los Angeles holding the 2028 Games. Australia has already hosted the Olympics twice, in Melbourne in 1956 and Sydney in 2000, widely considered one of the most successful games in recent history.
And Giannis Antetokounmpo delivered a historic 50-point performance when it mattered most in leading the Milwaukee Bucks to their first NBA title since 1971 by defeating the Phoenix Suns 105-98 on Tuesday. The Bucks captured the best-of-7 NBA Finals by 4-2, becoming only the 5th team to claim the crown after dropping the first 2 contests. Take a look.
I hope I give people around the world, from Africa, from Europe, give them hope, that it can be done. It can be done. 8.5 years ago, before I came to the league, I didn't know where my next move will come from. My mom was selling stuff in the street. And now I'm here, sitting at the top of the top, and I'm extremely blessed. I started playing basketball just to, help my family, try to get them out of the struggle, the challenges we were facing when we were kids. But, man, I never thought, I'm going to be 26 years old, with my team, playing the NBA Finals, just playing. And, I was just happy just being a part, not even winning, just being a part of this journey,
We used a lot of our failures as experience. We've been in a lot of situations our past years here. Then at the beginning of the year, it was just, we had a new team, a lot of new rotation guys, different guys stepping into the starting lineup. And we knew it was going to be challenging, but, we all said it was going to be worth it to learn, find out how to adjust and figure out what we need to do in the game. To win. We knew wasn't always going to be pretty. We knew we were going to have to win different styles of ball games, but that's the type of team you want to be.
It's hard to find more words to describe what Giannis does, but the way he made his free throws, the way he did everything, stepped up, the poise, the confidence, the leadership. Yep, he's been working on it. We say we want Giannis to get to the free throw line. We believed. We talked about it this past summer. To win a championship, you got to make free throws. You got to make shots. And he's made shots all throughout the playoffs. He's made free throws all throughout the playoffs. 6 block shots, I think, however many points. He's off the charts. He's the MVP of the NBA Finals.
Antetokounmpo, only the 7th player in final history with a 50-point game, made 17 of 19 free throws while adding 14 rebounds and 5 blocked shots as the Bucks went an NBA best 10-1 at home in the playoffs to end a half-century title drought. The 26-year-old Greek forward matched the greatest scoring night in a closeout game in finals history, the 50-point effort by Bob Pitt Pettit in 1958 for the St. Louis Hawks over Boston. Two-time NBA Most Valuable Player Antetokounmpo, who had been questionable for the opener with a hyperextended knee, also equaled Michael Jordan and Hakeem Olajuwon as the only players to take NBA Finals MVP and NBA Defensive Player of the Year awards in the same season.
Beautiful win indeed. Well, finally, in our news, ABC European Bureau's Malu Francisco takes us to the white town of Thorn in the Netherlands. Watch this.
If the United States has a White House, the Netherlands has white houses. These white houses are found in the town of Thorn in the Dutch province of Limburg to the south of the country. The town is dubbed as the White Village because of the white brick houses in the historical center of the town of Thorn. Although it's a tiny village, it's a popular tourist attraction. At the moment, it has a population of over 2,000. The village of Thorn used to be a tiny kingdom founded in the 9th century. In the 1700s, the village was occupied by French rulers. That time, the members of the royal families fled the village, leaving their houses vacant. They were later occupied by poor villagers. However, there was a little problem confronting the villagers because the French ruled that taxes will be based on the size of the windows. Oh, that means the bigger the window, the higher the tax. The smaller the window, the lower the tax. And so, logically, the villagers reduced the size of their windows. They covered a part of the window by adding new bricks and painting traces of the original size with white. And that's the story of the white village of Thorn in Limburg in the southern part of the Netherlands. Today, the historical center of the town of Thorn is protected. In the Netherlands, Malu Francisco will live in interesting times.
Oh, I love it. Thank you, Malu.
You said she invited you to go there.
Hopefully. Yes, I don't think it will ever.
Wait for us. Don't come home yet. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Hero. Please join us again tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.
This program is supported by Protect Plus Gold, a broad-spectrum disinfectant, kills 99.9% of disease-causing germs and works in 10 minutes.